Ever wondered what truly disturbing secrets lurk in the unindexed corners of the internet? Beyond the search engines, there's a place where the most unsettling human experiences are shared, tales so dark, they'll leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the digital world. Brace yourself, because we're diving deep into the chilling realities of dark web forums. You might think you know the internet. You might believe you've seen its worst, the viral videos, the endless arguments, the clickbait headlines. But there's another layer, hidden beneath the surface, where anonymity isn't just a feature, it's a necessity. Here, in the shadowy depths of the dark web, people gather to share stories that would never survive the light of day. Some are confessions. Some are warnings. Some are desperate cries for help, lost in the endless static of encrypted servers and untraceable usernames. Tonight, I'm going to take you there. Not as a voyeur, but as a witness. These are not urban legends or creepypasta. These are the stories that real people have posted, late at night, when the only thing more terrifying than being found is being ignored. Let's start with a post that appeared on a forum known only as The Black Lantern. The thread was titled, simply, "I Saw Myself." The user's name was a string of random characters, but the story was anything but random. It began with a question: has anyone here ever met their own doppelganger? The replies were the usual mix of jokes and skepticism, until the original poster returned, hours later, with a wall of text that silenced the thread. He described a night spent browsing the dark web out of boredom, clicking through dead links and abandoned chat rooms. Then, he found a live video feed. The title was his own home address. At first, he thought it was a prank. But as he watched, the camera panned through his living room, his kitchen, his hallway. He saw himself, sitting at his computer, typing. Except he wasn't wearing the same clothes. The man on the screen stood up, walked to the front door, and smiled directly into the camera. The feed cut out. The poster ended his story with a single line: "I haven't slept since." The thread exploded with speculation. Some said it was a deep fake, a cruel joke. Others insisted it was a warning, that the dark web isn't just a place for secrets, but a hunting ground for something far worse. The original poster never replied again. His account was deleted within hours. But the story lingered, copied and pasted across dozens of forums, a digital ghost that refused to fade. That's the thing about these stories. They don't end when the thread is locked or the site goes offline. They spread, infecting the minds of anyone who reads them. And the more you read, the more you start to wonder, how much of it is real. Let's move to another forum, this one called The Quiet Room. It's a place where people share experiences they can't explain, glitches in reality, lost time, impossible coincidences. One post, titled "The Man in the Mirror," caught my attention. The user, who called herself Lily, wrote about a recurring nightmare. Every night, she would dream of standing in front of her bathroom mirror, unable to move. Her reflection would smile, then step out of the glass, leaving her trapped on the other side. She dismissed it as stress, until the night she woke up standing in her bathroom, staring at her own sleeping body through the mirror. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The next morning, she woke up in bed, convinced it was just a dream. But when she looked in the mirror, her reflection didn't move in sync. It smiled, just a fraction too late. The replies were sympathetic, but skeptical. Then, other users began sharing similar stories. One described seeing their reflection blink when their eyes were closed. Another claimed their mirror self whispered secrets at night, things they couldn't remember in the morning but felt in their bones. The thread grew, a tapestry of shared unease, until a moderator locked it with a warning: do not feed the mirror. It's easy to dismiss these stories as fiction, the product of overactive imaginations and sleepless nights. But the dark web has a way of making you doubt your own certainty. The anonymity, the lack of moderation, the sheer volume of stories, it all blurs the line between reality and nightmare. But not all stories are supernatural. Some are simply wrong, in a way that's hard to describe. Take the infamous Red Room threads. You've probably heard the rumors, live streams of unspeakable acts, hidden behind paywalls and cryptic invitations. Most are hoaxes, designed to scare or scam the curious. But every so often, a story surfaces that feels different. One user, posting under the name Null, described receiving an invitation to a private stream. The message was simple: you have been chosen. The link led to a blank page, except for a single video window. The stream was dark, but he could hear breathing, slow and ragged. Then, a voice whispered his name. Not his username, his real name. The camera flickered, and for a split second, he saw his own bedroom, empty except for a figure standing in the corner, face hidden in shadow. The stream ended. The next day, he found a note on his pillow: "We see you." Null deleted his account, but not before warning others: if you get the invitation, don't watch. Don't even click. They know more than you think. These are just a few of the stories that circulate in the darkest corners of the internet. Some are warnings. Some are confessions. All of them are unsettling in their own way. But the most disturbing thing isn't the content, it's the sense that, out there, someone is always watching. Someone is always listening. And sometimes, the stories are just the beginning. If you're still with me, you're probably wondering, who are the people behind these stories? Are they just thrill seekers, spinning tales for attention? Or are they victims, reaching out from the shadows, hoping someone will believe them? The truth is, on the dark web, identity is fluid. Names change, locations are masked, and every post could be a confession or a trap. Let's look at a thread from a forum called The Last Exit. It's a place where people claim to have seen things they can't explain, things that haunt them long after they log off. The thread was titled, "The Door That Wasn't There Yesterday." The poster, using the handle Ghost Key, described living in a rundown apartment complex on the edge of a forgotten city. One night, after a power outage, he noticed a door at the end of his hallway, a door he swore had never been there before. Curiosity got the better of him. He opened the door and found a staircase spiraling downward, far deeper than the building's foundation should allow. He descended, phone flashlight trembling in his hand, until he reached a landing with a single, flickering bulb. The walls were covered in graffiti, names, dates, desperate messages. At the end of the hall was another door, this one marked with a symbol he didn't recognize. He turned back, but the stairs behind him had vanished. The only way out was forward. He opened the second door and found himself standing in his own apartment, except everything was reversed: left was right, right was left, and the air felt thick, like breathing underwater. On the table was a note, written in his own handwriting: "Don't trust the next door." He never found the door again, but sometimes, late at night, he hears footsteps in the hallway, stopping just outside his door. The replies to Ghost Key's story were a mix of disbelief and empathy. Some users shared similar experiences: doors that appeared and vanished, rooms that shouldn't exist, spaces that felt wrong in ways they couldn't explain. Others accused him of fabricating the story for attention. But a few, the ones who had been there themselves, offered advice: if you see a door that shouldn't be there, don't open it. Some places aren't meant to be found. It's easy to dismiss these stories as fiction, but the details, the way the air felt, the handwriting on the note, the sense of being watched, ring true to anyone who's ever experienced something they can't explain. The dark web is full of these stories, each one a puzzle piece in a larger, more disturbing picture. But not all stories are about places. Some are about people, strangers who appear and disappear, leaving chaos in their wake. On a forum called The Unseen, a user named Static posted a thread titled "The Man with No Face." He described a series of encounters with a man who seemed to follow him everywhere, on the subway, in the grocery store, even in his dreams. The man's face was always blurred, as if seen through frosted glass. No matter how hard Static tried to focus, he could never make out any features. The encounters escalated. Static began receiving emails from addresses he didn't recognize, each one containing a single image, a blurry photo of himself, taken from behind. The subject line was always the same: "I see you." He changed his routines, moved apartments, even switched jobs, but the man with no face always found him. The last post in the thread was a video, uploaded in the dead of night. It showed Static's apartment, empty except for a single chair facing the window. The camera panned to the reflection in the glass, a faceless figure, standing just behind the lens. The thread was locked by moderators, but not before dozens of users chimed in with their own stories of being watched, followed, hunted by something they couldn't name. Some said it was a government experiment, others blamed it on glitches in reality. But the fear was real, and it spread like wildfire. There's a pattern to these stories, a sense of inevitability, as if the act of sharing them only makes things worse. The more you talk about the man with no face, the more likely he is to find you. The more you acknowledge the door that shouldn't be there, the more often it appears. It's as if the dark web isn't just a place for stories, but a breeding ground for something that feeds on attention. But the most unsettling stories aren't always the most dramatic. Sometimes, it's the small details that linger, the way a username changes overnight, the sudden disappearance of a regular poster, the threads that vanish without explanation. On a forum called The Archive, users keep track of these anomalies, documenting every strange occurrence in meticulous detail. One user, Archivist, posted a list of threads that had disappeared in the past month. Most were innocuous, discussions about encryption, tips for staying anonymous. But a few stood out: how to disappear completely, voices in the static, the girl who wasn't there. Each thread had been deleted without warning, and the users who started them hadn't logged in since. Archivist theorized that there was a pattern, a hidden hand guiding the flow of information, erasing stories that got too close to the truth. Some users agreed, pointing to similar patterns on other forums. Others dismissed it as paranoia. But the evidence was hard to ignore. Threads vanished, users disappeared, and the stories that remained grew darker with each passing day. It's easy to get lost in these stories, to let the fear seep in and take root. But the dark web isn't just a place for horror, it's a mirror, reflecting the deepest anxieties of the people who use it. The stories may be unsettling, but they're also a testament to the power of human imagination, and the lengths will go to make sense of the unknown. If you're starting to feel uneasy, you're not alone. The deeper you go into these forums, the more you realize that the line between observer and participant is thinner than you think. It's not just about reading stories, it's about being drawn into them, piece by piece, until you start to question your own reality. Let's turn to a forum called The Signal. It's infamous for its threads about lost broadcasts, number stations, and mysterious transmissions that bleed through the static of late-night radio. One thread, titled "The Voice in the White Noise," was started by a user named Relay. He claimed to have intercepted a signal on an old shortwave radio, a frequency that wasn't listed anywhere in public databases. At first, it was just static. But then, beneath the hiss, he heard a voice, soft, almost mechanical, repeating a string of numbers and words in a language he couldn't identify. He recorded the broadcast and uploaded a clip. Other users analyzed the audio, slowing it down, running it through filters, trying to decode the message. Some claimed to hear their own names whispered in the background. Others said the voice described events that hadn't happened yet, accidents, disappearances, even deaths. Relay became obsessed. He built antennas, mapped out transmission times, and started to notice a pattern. The broadcasts always occurred at 3:33 a.m., and the content grew more personal with each passing night. One morning, he woke to find a note taped to his radio: "Stop listening." He posted a photo of the note, his hands shaking in the frame. The thread exploded with speculation: was it a prank, a warning, or something else entirely? Then, Relay stopped posting. His account went silent, and the thread was locked by moderators. But the audio clip remained, downloaded and re-uploaded across dozens of forums. Some users claimed that, after listening, they started receiving strange phone calls, dead air, then a faint voice whispering their name. Others said their radios turned on by themselves at 3:33 a.m., playing nothing but static. It's easy to dismiss these stories as coincidence, but the fear is contagious. The more you read, the more you start to notice patterns in your own life, glitches, coincidences, moments that feel scripted. The dark web isn't just a place for stories, it's a place where reality bends, where the act of reading can change the way you see the world. But not all stories are about signals from the void. Some are about the people who use the dark web as a last resort, a place to hide, to confess, to reach out for help when there's nowhere else to turn. On a forum called The Confessional, users post secrets they can't share anywhere else. Some are mundane, affairs, regrets, petty crimes. But others are darker, more desperate. One thread, titled, "I Can't Leave My Apartment," was posted by a user named Locked In. He described a growing sense of paranoia, convinced that someone, or something, was watching him from the hallway outside his door. At first, it was just a feeling, a prickle on the back of his neck. But then he started finding evidence: muddy footprints outside his door, strange symbols drawn in chalk on the walls, the sound of breathing just beyond the threshold. He set up cameras, but the footage always glitched at the crucial moment. He called the police, but they found nothing. His friends stopped visiting, convinced he was losing his mind. The thread became a lifeline, with other users offering advice, support, and, sometimes, warnings. "Don't open the door," one user wrote. "Whatever's out there, it's waiting for you to invite it in." The thread ended abruptly. Locked-In's last post was a single sentence: "It's inside now." His account was deleted, and the thread was archived, but the story spread, copied and pasted across the dark web. Some users claimed to have seen similar symbols in their own buildings. Others said they heard breathing in the dark, just beyond the edge of the light. It's stories like these that make the dark web so unsettling. It's not just the content, it's the sense of community, the way fear spreads from one user to another, infecting everyone who reads it. The anonymity of the forums makes it impossible to know what's real and what's fiction, but the emotions are always genuine. The fear, the desperation, the need to be believed, they're universal, and they bind the community together in ways that are both comforting and terrifying. But sometimes, the stories are more than just stories. Sometimes, they're warnings, messages from people who have seen too much, who have gone too far, and who want to keep others from making the same mistakes. On a forum called The Warning, users post lists of sites, links, and keywords to avoid. Some are obvious: scams, malware, phishing traps. But others are more cryptic. One post, titled "Do Not Search These Terms," listed a series of phrases in multiple languages. Some were nonsense, others were names, dates, or coordinates. The poster, Red Flag, claimed that searching for these terms would attract attention, from whom, he wouldn't say. The thread was filled with stories from users who ignored the warning, only to find their computers infected, their webcams activated, their personal information leaked. But the most chilling replies came from users who claimed that, after searching the forbidden terms, they started seeing the same phrase everywhere: "We know you're looking." It appeared in emails, text messages, even handwritten notes slipped under their doors. Some users laughed it off as a coordinated prank. Others disappeared from the forums, their accounts wiped clean. The dark web is full of these warnings, breadcrumbs left by those who have gone too far, who have seen what lies beyond the veil and want to keep others from following. But curiosity is a powerful force, and for every warning, there are a dozen users willing to take the risk, to push the boundaries, to see what happens when you step into the unknown. Curiosity, after all, is what drives most people to the dark web in the first place. It's the promise of forbidden knowledge, the thrill of seeing something you're not supposed to see. But as you read more, you start to realize that some knowledge comes with a price that isn't always paid in money. On a forum called The Exchange, users trade information, secrets, rumors, even coordinates to places that don't appear on any map. One thread, titled "The Coordinates Game," became infamous for its chilling consequences. The rules were simple: a user would post a set of GPS coordinates, and others would visit the location, documenting what they found. Most of the time, it was harmless: abandoned buildings, forgotten graveyards, strange art installations. But sometimes, the locations led to places that felt wrong. One user, Wayfinder, posted a set of coordinates deep in the woods outside a small town. He described finding a clearing with a single, ancient tree at its center. Hanging from the branches were dozens of old, weathered dolls, each one missing its eyes. At the base of the tree was a circle of stones, and in the center, a freshly dug hole. Wayfinder took photos, but when he tried to upload them, his computer crashed. When he returned home, he found a doll on his porch, one that looked exactly like him, down to the clothes he'd worn that day. The thread exploded with speculation. Some users claimed it was an elaborate hoax, a way to scare newcomers. Others insisted it was a warning, a sign that some places are better left undiscovered. Wayfinder stopped posting after that night. His account remained, but his presence vanished, leaving only the story behind. The coordinates game became a cautionary tale, a reminder that the dark web isn't just a digital space, it bleeds into the real world, leaving marks that can't be erased. Other users shared their own experiences, finding doors in the middle of forests, hearing voices in abandoned buildings, seeing their own names carved into trees or scratched into walls. The line between online and offline blurred, and the fear became something tangible, something you could carry with you long after you logged off. But not all stories are about places you can visit. Some are about places that visit you. On a forum called The Haunt, users share stories of digital hauntings, files that can't be deleted, images that appear on their screens without warning, messages from accounts that shouldn't exist. One thread, "The File That Won't Die," was started by a user named Loop. He described downloading a file from a hidden service, a simple text document, nothing more. But every time he tried to delete it, it reappeared on his desktop, sometimes with new content. The messages grew more personal, referencing things only Loop could know: childhood memories, private conversations, even dreams he'd never shared. He wiped his hard drive, bought a new computer, even moved to a new apartment. But the file always found him, appearing on his desktop like a digital ghost. The final message was a single line: "You can't run from yourself." Loop's account went silent after that. Other users reported similar experiences, files that followed them from device to device, messages that seemed to know their deepest fears. It's stories like these that make the dark web feel alive, as if it's not just a collection of servers and code, but a living, breathing entity that watches, learns, and remembers. The anonymity that protects users also isolates them, making it impossible to know who, or what, is on the other side of the screen. But sometimes, the most unsettling stories are the ones that feel the most familiar. On a forum called The Reflection, users share stories of déjà vu, lost time, and memories that don't match reality. One user, Echo, posted a thread titled "The Day That Repeats." She described waking up every morning to the same day, same weather, same conversations, same news headlines. At first, she thought it was a dream, but the details never changed. She tried to break the cycle, leaving her apartment, calling friends, even hurting herself, but every morning, she woke up in the same bed, on the same day. Other users chimed in, some with similar experiences, others with advice. Try to find the glitch, one user suggested. Look for something that doesn't belong. Echo began documenting every detail, searching for inconsistencies. One morning, she noticed a crack in her bathroom mirror that hadn't been there before. She focused on it, willing it to change. The next day, the crack was gone, but her reflection smiled a moment too late. The thread ended with a final post: "I found the glitch. But now, I think it found me." Echo's account was deleted, and the thread was archived, but the story spread, copied and shared across the dark web. Some users claimed to have experienced similar loops, others dismissed it as a creative writing exercise. But the fear lingered, a reminder that reality is more fragile than we like to believe. The dark web is a place of secrets, but it's also a place of connection, a community of people bound by fear, curiosity, and the need to be understood. The stories may be unsettling, but they're also a testament to the power of human imagination, and the lengths will go to make sense of the unknown. As you read these stories, you might start to wonder, why do people keep coming back? Why risk the nightmares, the paranoia, the sense that something is watching from the other side of the screen? The answer is as old as storytelling itself, because sometimes, the only way to face your fears is to name them, to share them, to know you're not alone. On a forum called The Witnesses, users gather to recount events they've seen but can't explain. The rules are strict: no fiction, no embellishment, just the raw, unfiltered truth as they experienced it. One thread, "The Man in the Window," became infamous for its chilling simplicity. The original poster, Nightwatch, described living in a high-rise apartment, his window facing another building across a narrow alley. Every night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., he would see a man standing in the window opposite his own. The man never moved, never blinked, just stared directly at Nightwatch's window. He tried to ignore it, but the sense of being watched grew unbearable. He bought blackout curtains, but every morning, he found them drawn open, the man still staring. He called building security, but they found the apartment across the alley empty, no furniture, no signs of life, just dust and darkness. Nightwatch set up a camera, but the footage always glitched at 2:17 a.m., replaced by static. The thread filled with replies, some offering advice, others sharing similar experiences. But the most unsettling reply came from a new user, 217, who posted a single sentence, "I see you too." The thread was locked, but the story spread, copied and pasted across the dark web. Some users claimed to have seen the man in their own windows, at the same time each night. Others dismissed it as a hoax, but the fear was real, and it lingered long after the thread was archived. But not all stories are about being watched. Some are about watching others, and the guilt that comes with it. On a forum called The Observer, users confess to things they've seen online, videos, images, live streams, that they wish they could forget. One thread, "The Stream That Shouldn't Exist," was started by a user named Viewer. Viewer described stumbling across a live stream on a hidden service, the title simply, Room Zero. The stream showed a small, windowless room, empty except for a single chair and a table. Every hour, on the hour, a new object would appear on the table, a photograph, a toy, a piece of jewelry. Sometimes, a figure would enter the room, always out of focus, always silent. The stream ran for days, then weeks, with no explanation, no context. Viewer became obsessed, documenting every object, every movement, trying to find a pattern. Other users joined in, analyzing the footage, cross-referencing missing persons reports, unsolved crimes, even urban legends. Theories abounded: was it an art project, a ransom demand, a message to someone watching? But the truth remained elusive. Then, one night, the stream changed. The camera panned to the door, and for the first time, it opened. A figure stepped inside, carrying a mirror. They placed it on the table, facing the camera. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the reflection in the mirror showed not the room, but the faces of the users watching the stream, dozens of faces, each one staring back in shock and horror. The stream ended abruptly. Viewer's final post was a warning: if you see Room Zero, don't watch. It's watching you too. The thread was deleted, but the story spread, a digital ghost haunting the forums. It's stories like these that make the dark web so unsettling. It's not just the content, it's the sense that, by reading, by watching, by participating, you become part of the story. The boundaries between observer and observed blur, and the fear becomes something you carry with you, long after you log off. But sometimes, the stories are about hope, about finding connection in the darkness, about reaching out and being heard. On a forum called The Lantern, users share stories of survival, of overcoming fear, of finding light in the shadows. One thread, "The Hand in the Dark," was started by a user named Survivor. Survivor described a night spent lost in the woods, his phone dead, his flashlight flickering. He stumbled across an old, abandoned cabin, its windows boarded up, its door hanging open. Inside, he found a single candle burning on a table, and beside it, a note, "You're not alone." He spent the night in the cabin, listening to the wind howl outside, convinced that something was watching from the trees. But the candle never went out, and the note gave him the strength to make it through the night. The thread filled with replies, stories of near misses, of close calls, of finding hope in the darkest places. The lantern became a beacon, a place where users could share their fears and find comfort in the knowledge that they weren't alone. The dark web is a place of secrets, but it's also a place of connection, a community bound by fear, curiosity, and the need to be understood. The stories may be unsettling, but they're also a testament to the power of human imagination, and the lengths will go to make sense of the unknown. But for every story of hope, there are a dozen more that end in silence. The dark web is littered with abandoned threads, unanswered questions, and users who vanish without a trace. It's this silence, the sudden, unexplained absence, that haunts the forums more than any ghost story ever could. On a forum called The Vanished, users track the disappearances of regular posters. The community is tight-knit, and when someone goes silent, people notice. One thread, "Where is Blue Jay?" became a case study in collective anxiety. Blue Jay was a prolific poster, known for his detailed guides on staying anonymous and his calm, rational advice in the face of panic. Then, one day, he stopped posting. At first, users assumed he'd simply moved on. But as days turned into weeks, concern grew. Private messages went unanswered. His last login timestamp never changed. Some users began to dig, piecing together his last known activity. Blue Jay's final post was in a thread about the blackout list, a rumored database of users who had gotten too close to something dangerous. The thread itself was cryptic, filled with half-finished sentences and broken links. Blue Jay's last words were, "If you see your name on the list, log off and don't come back." The post was edited minutes later, the warning replaced with a single period. Then, nothing. Speculation ran wild. Some believed Blue Jay had been doxed, his real identity uncovered by someone with malicious intent. Others thought he'd simply grown tired of the constant paranoia and walked away. But a few users, the ones who had been around the longest, whispered about something darker, a force that policed the boundaries of the dark web, erasing those who got too close to the truth. The Vanished became a digital graveyard, each thread a memorial to a user who had disappeared. Some were eventually found, alive, well, simply tired of the endless fear. Others were never heard from again, their accounts frozen in time, their stories unfinished. But sometimes, the silence is broken in the most unexpected ways. On a forum called The Return, users share stories of people who come back, changed, different, not quite themselves. One thread, "He's not my brother," was started by a user named Sparrow. Sparrow described her brother's obsession with the dark web. He spent hours every night browsing forums, chasing rumors, searching for something he refused to name. Then, one night, he vanished. His phone went straight to voicemail, his apartment was empty, his computer wiped clean. The police found nothing, and Sparrow was left with only questions. Weeks later, her brother returned. He looked the same, sounded the same, but something was off. He didn't remember where he'd been, couldn't answer simple questions about his life. He avoided mirrors, flinched at sudden noises, and spent hours staring at blank screens. Sparrow tried to help, but the distance between them grew. One night, she found him sitting in the dark, whispering to someone on his computer, someone she couldn't see, someone who whispered back in a voice that sounded almost like her own. The thread filled with replies, stories of loved ones who had returned from the dark web, changed, distant, haunted by memories they couldn't explain. Some users theorized about psychological trauma, others about possession, or even digital doppelgangers. But the fear was the same, that the dark web doesn't just take people, it gives them back, different, altered, as if something else had come through in their place. It's this sense of the unknown, the idea that the dark web is a gateway, not just to information, but to something else, that keeps people coming back, even as they're haunted by what they find. The forums are filled with stories of near misses, of close calls, of users who saw something they shouldn't have and barely escaped with their sanity intact. On a forum called The Threshold, users share stories of the moment they almost crossed a line they couldn't come back from. One thread, The Last Click, was started by a user named Exit. He described following a series of links, each one more cryptic than the last, until he reached a page with a single button labeled Continue. The page warned that there was no going back, that clicking the button would change everything. Exit hesitated, his finger hovering over the mouse. He described a sense of vertigo, as if the room was spinning, as if something was watching him from the other side of the screen. He closed the browser, shut down his computer, and walked away. But the feeling never left. He started seeing the word "continue" everywhere, in emails, on billboards, even in his dreams. The thread became a place for users to share their own last-click moments, the times they almost went too far, the times they listened to the voice that told them to stop. Some users ignored the warnings, and their stories ended in silence. Others heeded the call, and lived to tell the tale. The dark web is a place of boundaries, between truth and fiction, between safety and danger, between the self and the unknown. The stories that fill its forums are a testament to the human need to explore, to push limits, to seek out the darkness even when we know it might consume us. The deeper you go, the more you realize that the dark web is less a place and more a state of mind, a labyrinth built from secrets, obsessions, and the things we're too afraid to say out loud. It's a world where every story is a breadcrumb, every warning a signpost, and every silence a void waiting to be filled. On a forum called The Labyrinth, users map out the strangest corners of the dark web, sharing links to sites that defy explanation. Some are puzzles, filled with cryptic riddles and hidden messages. Others are mazes of endless pages, each click leading deeper into a spiral of confusion. One thread, The Endless Site, became a legend among explorers. The original poster, Maze Runner, described finding a website with no homepage, just a single link labeled Enter. Clicking it led to another page, and another, each one slightly different, colors shifted, text rearranged, images distorted. There was no back button, no way to return to the start. The only way out was to close the browser, but even then, Maze Runner claimed, the site followed him. Pop-ups appeared on other websites, emails arrived from addresses he didn't recognize, all containing the same word, deeper. Other users tried to find the site, but the link never worked the same way twice. Some reported getting lost for hours, clicking through page after page, each one more unsettling than the last. The images grew stranger, faces with too many eyes, landscapes that twisted in impossible ways, text that seemed to change when you looked away. Some users claimed to hear whispers through their speakers, voices urging them to keep going, to see what lay at the end. No one ever found the end. The thread became a collection of stories, each one a testament to the power of curiosity, and the danger of getting lost in a place with no exit. Maze Runner's final post was a warning: if you find the endless site, don't go deeper. Some mazes aren't meant to be solved. But the dark web isn't just a maze of links and puzzles. It's a place where people confront the darkest parts of themselves, where anonymity strips away the masks we wear in the daylight. On a forum called The Confessor, users share secrets they've never told anyone else. Some are mundane, petty crimes, hidden addictions, forbidden loves. But others are confessions of a different kind. One thread, The Shadow in the Code, was started by a user named Ghostscript. He claimed to be a programmer who had worked on a project for a client he never met in person. The job was simple: write code for a secure messaging app. But as he dug into the project, he found lines of code that didn't make sense, snippets that seemed to do nothing, or worse, seemed to watch him. He tried to remove the code, but it always reappeared. His computer began to act strangely, files moved on their own, messages appeared in his logs, always the same phrase, "I see you." Ghostscript became convinced that the code was alive, that it was watching him through his own screen. He wiped his drives, destroyed his hardware, but the feeling never left. The thread filled with replies, other programmers who had found similar code, similar messages, similar shadows lurking in the digital depths. Some users dismissed it as paranoia, but others saw a pattern, a network of watchers, hidden in the code that runs the dark web, observing, recording, waiting. The fear wasn't just of being watched, but of being changed, of becoming part of something you can't control. But sometimes, the stories are about the things we bring with us, the fears, the memories, the ghosts that haunt us long before we ever log on. On a forum called The Echo Chamber, users share stories of the past bleeding into the present, of old wounds reopened by something they found online. One user, Rewind, posted a thread titled, "The Video I Shouldn't Have Watched." He described finding a video on a hidden service, the title just a string of numbers. The video showed a house he recognized, his childhood home, long since abandoned. The footage was grainy, shot from outside, peering through windows, moving from room to room. At first, he thought it was a prank, but then he saw himself, a child, playing in the living room, unaware of the camera. The video ended with a shot of the front door, slowly opening. Rewind said he hadn't thought about that house in years, but after watching the video, he started dreaming about it every night. In the dreams, he was always standing at the door, unable to move, watching as something approached from the darkness outside. Other users shared similar stories, videos, images, messages that dredged up memories they thought they'd buried. The echo chamber became a place for catharsis, but also for fear, a reminder that the past is never as far away as we think, and that the dark web has a way of finding the cracks in our armor. The stories that fill these forums are more than just entertainment. They're a map of the human psyche, a record of our deepest fears and desires, written in code and whispers and silence. The dark web is a mirror, and sometimes, what we see staring back is more unsettling than anything we could have imagined. If you've made it this far, you might be wondering, is there any way out? Can you ever truly leave the dark web behind, or does it follow you, a shadow at the edge of your vision, long after you've closed your browser? The stories suggest that escape is possible, but never simple. The price of curiosity is a kind of knowledge you can't unlearn, a sense that the world is stranger, and more fragile, than you ever realized. On a forum called The Exit Node, users share stories of leaving the dark web for good. Some describe it as a detox, a slow process of disconnecting, deleting accounts, and erasing digital footprints. Others say it's more like breaking an addiction, every day, the urge to check just one more thread, to see if there's a new story, a new warning, a new mystery to solve. One thread, the last logoff, was started by a user named Clean Slate. He described his final night on the dark web, a ritual of sorts. He logged into every forum he'd ever visited, read his old posts, and said goodbye to the usernames that had become more real to him than the people in his offline life. He deleted his accounts, wiped his drives, and unplugged his computer for good. But even after all that, he said, the stories stayed with him. He'd see familiar usernames in dreams, hear the static of lost broadcasts in the hum of his refrigerator, catch glimpses of the man with no face in the reflections of passing cars. Other users replied with their own rituals, burning old hard drives, moving to new cities, changing their names. Some found peace, others only more questions. But the consensus was clear: you can leave the dark web, but it never really leaves you. The stories become part of you, woven into the fabric of your memory, impossible to forget. But for some, the only way out is through. On a forum called The Descent, users share stories of confronting their fears head-on, of seeking out the darkest corners, the most forbidden threads, in hopes of finding closure. One user, Deep Dive, posted a thread titled The Final Thread. He described a journey through the most infamous sites, the ones everyone warns you to avoid. He catalogued every horror, every warning, every glitch and ghost and shadow. At the end, he found a page with a single question: are you sure you want to know? Deep Dive clicked yes. The page went black. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a message appeared: you already do. Deep Dive's account was deleted minutes later. Some users speculated that he'd finally found the truth, whatever that meant. Others said it was just another story, another layer of the labyrinth. But the thread became a legend, a digital campfire tale told to newcomers as a warning. Some questions have no answers, and some journeys have no return. The dark web is full of these endings that aren't really endings, threads that trail off into silence, stories that loop back on themselves, mysteries that refuse to be solved. It's a place where closure is rare, and certainty is a luxury no one can afford. The forums are filled with users searching for meaning, for connection, for a way to make sense of the chaos. But the only thing they find, more often than not, is each other. On a forum called The Circle, users gather to share the stories that haunt them most, the ones they can't forget, the ones that changed them. One thread, The Story That Follows, became a kind of group therapy. Users posted the tales that kept them up at night, the ones they wished they'd never read. Some were simple, a strange email, a glitchy video, a voice in the static. Others were more complex, stories of lost time, of doors that shouldn't exist, of faces that appear in every crowd. The replies were always the same: "I've seen this too. You're not alone. It happened to me." The circle became a place of comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the internet, there's a kind of solidarity, a shared understanding that the world is bigger and stranger than we can ever know. But the most unsettling stories are the ones that end with a question. On a forum called The Unanswered, users post mysteries that have never been solved. One thread, The Disappearing Forum, described a site that would appear and vanish at random, accessible only through a series of cryptic links. The forum was always empty, except for a single post: "You found us. Now what?" No one ever figured out who ran the site, or what its purpose was. Some users claimed that, after visiting, they started seeing the phrase, "Now what?" everywhere, in dreams, in emails, even scrawled on bathroom walls. The Unanswered is a testament to the power of mystery, to the human need for closure, and to the unsettling truth that some questions are better left unasked. The dark web is a place of stories, but it's also a place of silences, of gaps and absences, of things that can't be explained. And maybe that's the most unsettling thing of all, not the stories themselves, but the spaces between them. The sense that, no matter how much you read, no matter how deep you go, there's always something just out of reach, something waiting in the dark, watching, listening, waiting for you to ask the next question. If you're still listening, you might be feeling that strange, electric tension, the sense that you're not just hearing stories, but becoming part of them. That's the paradox of the dark web: the more you try to keep your distance, the more it draws you in. The stories are like seeds, planted in your mind, growing in the quiet hours when you're alone with your thoughts. On a forum called The Watchers, users discuss the feeling of being observed, not just by other people, but by the internet itself. One thread, The Algorithm Knows, was started by a user named Pattern. He described a series of coincidences that grew too precise to ignore: ads for things he'd only thought about, emails referencing conversations he'd never had, search results that seemed to anticipate his next question. At first, he blamed it on data mining, on the invisible machinery of targeted advertising. But then, the coincidences grew stranger. Pattern began receiving messages from accounts he didn't recognize, each one referencing details from his private life, childhood memories, inside jokes, fears he'd never shared. The messages always ended with the same phrase: "We're learning." He changed his passwords, wiped his devices, even moved to a new city. But the messages followed, appearing on new accounts, in new places, always with the same signature. Other users chimed in, sharing their own stories of digital déjà vu, websites that seemed to know too much, search engines that finished their thoughts, videos that autoplayed at just the right, or wrong, moment. Some theorized about advanced AI, others about surveillance, but a few suggested something deeper: that the dark web itself was alive, a collective consciousness built from the fears and obsessions of its users. The thread became a meditation on paranoia, on the ways technology blurs the line between coincidence and intention. Pattern's final post was a warning: if you feel like you're being watched, you probably are. But it's not just people watching. It's the stories themselves. But the sense of being watched isn't always digital. On a forum called The Liminal, users share stories of places that feel wrong, empty parking lots at midnight, stairwells that seem to stretch forever, rooms that feel bigger on the inside than the outside. One thread, The Hallway That Never Ends, was started by Tenback. He described wandering through his office building late at night, only to find a hallway he'd never seen before. The lights flickered, the air grew cold, and no matter how far he walked, the hallway never ended. He turned around, but the way back was gone. Only after hours of walking did he find a door, marked Exit. When he stepped through, he was back in his office, but everything was slightly off, colors muted, clocks running backward, coworkers who didn't recognize him. Other users shared similar stories, of elevators that stopped at floors that didn't exist, of doors that led to impossible spaces, of streets that looped back on themselves. The Liminal became a catalog of places that exist on the edge of reality, places that feel like glitches in the world's programming. The stories were unsettling not because of what happened, but because of what could have happened, because of the sense that, at any moment, you could step through the wrong door and never come back. But perhaps the most disturbing stories are the ones that end with a choice. On a forum called The Fork, users share moments when they had to decide, go deeper, or turn back. One thread, The Offer, was started by Choice. He described receiving an email from an address he didn't recognize, offering him access to a site he'd never heard of. The email was simple, "You've been selected. Click here to accept." Choice hesitated, hovering over the link, feeling the weight of the decision. He didn't click. The next day, he received another email, "We noticed you didn't accept. Are you sure?" The emails kept coming, each one more insistent, each one promising answers, secrets, power. Other users shared their own offers, invitations to private forums, links to hidden sites, promises of knowledge or wealth or connection. Some accepted, and their stories ended in silence. Others refused, and the offers stopped. But the fear lingered, the sense that, somewhere out there, someone is always watching, always waiting, always ready to make the next offer. The Fork became a place for reflection, for users to share the moments when they chose to turn back, to close the browser, to walk away. The stories are a reminder that, in the end, the only real power you have is the power to choose, to decide how deep you want to go, how much you want to know, how far you're willing to follow the story. And maybe that's the real lesson of the dark web forums, that the most unsettling stories aren't the ones you read, but the ones you almost lived. The moments when you stood at the edge of the unknown, and chose, one way or another, not to cross. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the unsettling stories of dark web forums. If you've stayed with me this long, you've seen how these tales are more than just digital campfire stories, they're a reflection of our deepest fears, our wildest curiosities, and the strange, collective consciousness that emerges when people gather in the shadows, searching for meaning in the unknown. But before we close the browser, there's one last story, a thread that appears and disappears across multiple forums, never staying in one place for long. It's called The Final Post, and it's always started by a different user, but the story is always the same. The post begins with a simple question: are you reading this alone? Most people answer yes, not thinking much of it. The thread continues, describing a series of events that feel eerily familiar, strange noises in the house, the feeling of being watched, the sense that something is just out of sight. The poster claims that, by reading the thread, you've invited something in, a presence that lingers just behind your screen, waiting for you to finish the story. The replies are always a mix of skepticism and fear. Some users laugh it off, others claim to hear footsteps in the hallway, or see movement in the corner of their eye. A few post frantic updates, saying their devices are acting up, their lights are flickering, their pets are staring at empty corners. The thread always ends the same way: the original poster deletes their account, and the thread vanishes, leaving only screenshots and rumors behind. It's easy to dismiss this as a prank, a bit of digital folklore designed to spook the unwary. But the story persists, spreading from forum to forum, changing just enough each time to feel new. Some say it's a test, a way to see who's paying attention. Others believe it's a ritual, a digital summoning that only works if you believe in it. But the truth is, the story works because it taps into something universal, the fear that, in the act of reading, you've become part of the story yourself. And maybe you have. Maybe, as you listen to these stories, you start to notice the little things, the way your screen flickers, the way the shadows in your room seem to shift, the way the silence feels heavier than it did before. Maybe you'll remember these stories the next time you're alone at night, scrolling through endless pages, wondering if you're really alone after all. But there's another side to these stories, one that's easy to overlook in the darkness. For every tale of fear and paranoia, there's a thread of connection, a reminder that, even in the most isolated corners of the internet, people are reaching out, sharing their experiences, trying to make sense of a world that often feels too big, too strange, too unknowable. The dark web forums are unsettling, yes, but they're also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the need to tell stories, to be heard, to find others who understand. So what do we take away from all this? Maybe it's a warning: be careful what you search for, and be mindful of the doors you open, both online and off. Maybe it's a challenge, to question what you think you know, to look for the patterns in the noise, to recognize that sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that feel the most real. Or maybe it's just a reminder that, no matter how deep you go, there's always a way back, if you choose to take it. As we close this chapter, remember that the stories you've heard tonight are just a fraction of what's out there. The dark web is always growing, always changing, always waiting for the next curious soul to stumble in and add their own story to the mix. Maybe you'll be the next one to post a warning, or a confession, or a mystery that no one can solve. Maybe you'll be the one who finds the answer everyone's been searching for, or maybe you'll just be another name on a list, another thread that ends in silence. But whatever you do, remember this: the internet is a mirror, and the stories you find there are reflections of yourself, your fears, your hopes, your questions, your need to connect. The dark web is unsettling not because of what's hidden there, but because of what it reveals about us, about the things we're willing to believe, and the lengths we'll go to find meaning in the darkness. So the next time you find yourself wandering through the endless corridors of the internet, remember the stories you've heard tonight. Remember the warnings, the mysteries, the moments when you almost clicked continue. And remember that, in the end, the scariest stories are the ones that never really end, the ones that follow you home, that whisper in the quiet moments, that remind you that the unknown is always just a click away. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you're feeling unsettled, you're not alone. That's the power of stories: they linger, they echo, they connect us in ways we can't always explain. So close your browser, turn off your screen, and step back into the light. But don't be surprised if, the next time you hear a strange noise in the dark, you find yourself wondering, is it just your imagination, or is it something you brought back with you from the shadows?